Okay, good afternoon. I want to welcome everybody here to this exciting day for the people of not only of Bethlehem, but of Allentown and Easton, as we kick off the birth of what we are calling the Three City Coalition, which is going to be a partnership between Allentown, Bethlehem, and Easton to work on shared solutions to regional problems. And I can't be more excited to have my two great friends here, Mayor Turk and Mayor Panto, here with us today. But the first thing I really want to say is this isn't about the mayors. What we're doing here is we're bringing the cities together. And this is about creating a permanent structure between the three cities. Oftentimes administrations change, continuity gets in the way of that progress, and what we're trying to do here is build something that is able to elevate the public interest and the public voice of the three cities to a permanent place that honestly it has not had in the Lehigh Valley traditionally. None of that is work that we do alone. I see a lot of our great friends here from City Council, Councilwoman Dr. Enix, Councilwoman Leone, and Councilwoman Kwiatek here as well. Thank you for joining. And the big word of today here is collaboration. Oftentimes, we are very proud in the Lehigh Valley about where we are from. We think of ourselves as Allentown people or Bethlehem people or Easton people, but the issues that we need to focus on as a region do not know any municipal boundaries. And we're going to get into a little bit about what that means, what are the issues that we want to start by focusing on. But before I do any of that, I am going to turn to Mayor Turk to make a couple comments, followed by Mayor Panto.
Buenas tardes. Glad to be here with all of you today. I'm particularly glad to see some friends from the Lehigh Valley Chamber of Commerce because I think you guys understand what this is all about, working together. My background prior to being elected mayor of the city of Allentown was in regional economic development. I deeply understand how much better we can do when we do it together. Recently, I gave a State of the City address where I talked about the various different accomplishments that my administration had been able to achieve in the city of Allentown over the first season of our grand experience. And we looked forward to season two. Much of season two in the city of Allentown is focused on getting to that clean, safe, and healthy city by empowering our city employees to work in an inclusive environment, and a welcoming environment, and a caring environment, but more deeply working together with engaged residents. The whole purpose of that discussion and our effort in the city of Allentown specifically is centered on collaboration. It's on working together. The complex challenges that we face in the city are challenges that we can't solve, that present problems to us that we cannot solve by ourselves in the city of Allentown. We need friends. We need collaborators within city government. We need collaborators within the private sector in the city of Allentown. We need our residents to be deeply engaged in the life of the city. And that same spirit is what brings us up here today. We can't solve the challenges that we face in the Lehigh Valley all by ourselves. Our partners in Bethlehem, our partners in Easton, our partners across the Lehigh Valley need to be part of what we do together. We realize the importance of collaboration, and we realize the importance of standing side by side with each other and speaking with a single voice. And that's what we're starting to do today as mayors of the cities of Allentown, Bethlehem, and Easton, and as representatives of our city governments. I'm incredibly excited by the opportunity to work with these two fine gentlemen, and most importantly, more important than you guys perhaps, sorry, but your staff. The people who work in our cities are absolutely incredible. They are what makes this whole thing work. And I'm so excited to be able to share my team with Bethlehem and Easton, and I'm so excited to be able to work closely with the amazing team here in Bethlehem and with the Easton folks. So thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm very much looking forward to shared activities together. Y nos vemos.
I will just follow up by saying that I think we have two really good people who are leading Allentown and Bethlehem, and I think we have a good person leading Easton too. I don't want to be, but I also want to say that collectively, when I came here to my meetings, we had a meeting in South Bethlehem, and we had a meeting here. I came through 5 municipalities, Lehigh Valley is made up of 62 municipalities, but we're really just one community. I mean, we live in a face-to-face association. I go to Allentown, Bethlehem, Easton, Slate Belt. I mean, it's no different. We all go to the same churches. We shop in many of the same grocery stores, etc. Go to the same healthcare facilities. We are one community. And I think what we're going to announce today, we're going to let Mayor Reynolds announce that, really comes to the point of saying that. The collaboration and cooperation that the three of us have needs to be extended beyond to the entire Lehigh Valley. I think organizations have come before us. Matt worked with the Lehigh Valley Economic Development Corporation, Greater Lehigh Valley Chamber of Commerce, the Lehigh Valley United Way. All these things now stretch across community, across geopolitical boundaries. Most people, unfortunately, don't realize where they live. So I get phone calls, and they get phone calls too, from Palmer Township, Forks Township, Wilsonboro, with concerns. I still get blamed for not doing the Dixie Cup. It's in Wilsonboro. Okay? I would love to help you, and I will. I have offered to help. But it's not in Easton. And I realize that that's not ignorance on the part of the community, it's lack of education. And I think what we'll be doing is also educating people about our important topics. There are really important topics that I care a lot about, and I know Matt and Willie does also. These that we're going to try to tackle first, are really important to the community. And they have nothing to do with the cities. The perfunctory citizen services of a city is the public safety. Providing public safety, police, fire, emergency medical services, and then on the other side, parks and recreations. We don't have departments that deal with climate change. We don't have departments that deal with some of the other issues we're going to talk about today. But we do have a desire to get it done for our residents. And I think that's the most important part. This isn't about the three of us. It's not about mayors. It's not about council members. Sorry, council members. But it's not about them. It's about the residents and what their quality of life in the Lehigh Valley is like. Now, we work hard every day to make the quality of life better in our communities. But this is something that's beyond our geopolitical boundaries, and the topics we're going to tackle are really huge. They're huge not only for the city of Easton, or Allentown or Bethlehem, or the Lehigh Valley, or state of Pennsylvania. They're huge for the entire country and the entire world. And it's something that as a former chairman of the National League of Cities Environmental Committee, I'm very interested in that, and especially one of them, but all three of them. So thank you.
Thank you. So one of the things I have to do too is I have to thank Mayor Panto and Mayor Turk, because they come into these conversations with no ego, with the idea about how do we, as we like to say, how do we get as many people in the same room as possible working on the same issues. And I think there's a time where you wouldn't necessarily be able to get people like this together to have these conversations. I don't want to speak for either one of the other two mayors, but we have certainly been surprised how often somebody says, it's great to see the three of you together. Like, people in the Lehigh Valley are like, we don't usually see the three mayors together. Yeah, we're trying to unwind that. We're trying to change that. People in the Lehigh Valley, as we know, they tend to think of themselves. I'm a Bethlehem person. I'm an Allentown person. I'm an Easton person. As Mayor Panto said, even if they don't actually live in the city of Bethlehem. But there is a power to that. There is a power to the idea that people that live in our townships still think of themselves as being from Bethlehem. People that live in the townships think of themselves as being from Easton or Allentown. It is the dominant identity of the Lehigh Valleys, the three cities. And that gives us a collective power to be able to come together to work on shared solutions. You hear people say this a lot, and I spent 12 and a half years in Allentown teaching at William Allen High School. Obviously, I've spent my whole life here in Bethlehem. Natalie has her family practice in Easton. I spend a lot of time in all three cities. And when we say that a win for Easton is a win for Bethlehem, or a win for Allentown is a win for Easton, we need to get everybody to have that mindset. Is if they're doing something in Allentown that helps out our housing crisis, that is a good thing for people in Bethlehem. If Sal does something in Easton that is helping to make a more sustainable Lehigh Valley or help to reduce homelessness, that helps us in Bethlehem. These issues, as we said, know no municipal bounds. We are starting this as with our own priorities that we have heard from our own residents, a couple things that we're going to talk about today. But as I said, this is a permanent city structure thing. This is something that it doesn't matter who comes after us, that the cities will be part of this partnership together to be able to keep that work going. Private institutions often have that continuity. Part of the way that private institutions are able to carry out their goals and their motivations and their priorities is because they have that type of continuity continuity that you don't always have because of elections, which is good. That's the way democracy works. But the public ends up losing out on that. You don't get to make as much progress as you can without these type of partnerships and without this type of collaboration. So if we can kind of go to our next slide here, we were focusing on these kind of three issues to start. The issue of housing, homelessness, and sustainability. And those three areas that we talk about is the idea of advocating, educating, and partnering. We are going to work together to be able to advocate for city and regional solutions that are beneficial to our individual cities and our cities collectively. We are going to educate on the idea that our futures are tied to each other. They're tied to each other morally and ethically because people are people and it doesn't matter where they live, but also as far as our own city's future economically, culturally, within our neighborhoods, our futures are tied together. And then finally, we are going to find different ways to partner. And we're going to tell you a little bit about our first kind of partnership there today. But that's kind of the idea, is like, how are we able to speak with one unified voice? When the three mayors or your three cities or your mayors and your city councils all are in the same room and they say, this is a priority, people listen in a way that when we are by ourselves, they just doesn't necessarily have that same power. So what we took a look at here is we came up with a couple of different examples about what we're talking about here as far as this idea of advocating, educating, and partnership. So that idea of advocating is the idea of working with our state, regional leaders on shared solutions. And then also that idea that we want to speak with one voice on issues having to do with transportation or infrastructure. Speak with one voice as far as our regional bodies such as the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission. Oftentimes the opinion, and we've sat through those meetings before, and I hear Mayor Panto say something, I'm like, yeah, that's the same opinion we have here in the city of Bethlehem. Or Mayor Turk weighs in on something, and we say, exactly, that's the way we feel, because what is good for Allentown, Easton is almost always good for the city of Bethlehem. So that idea that we're going to advocate together. We are also going to continue to utilize that word educate, is how do we make progress on these issues together to let people understand that the market doesn't know any type of municipal boundaries. It doesn't matter. People, as Matt said before, like people on either side of Club Avenue, they believe the same things. Like they want the same things. They don't understand that like, oh, I'm on the other side, so somehow, my priorities should be different. They are not. So we are going to try to define those shared priorities through different forums and different events. We are going to spend time in each other's cities talking about how we are connected. And then finally, we are going to find ways to partner. One of the things, we just had a meeting upstairs with our great folks in Bethlehem from WSP. Those of us from Bethlehem know that in our climate action plan, one of the things it called for was creating a green ribbon commission that asked our institutions within the city of Bethlehem to come together to be part of this commission to talk and to advocate for sustainable practices, to talk about all the great things they're already doing within their institutions. One of the things that came up within our own internal conversations is like, why are we doing this in a silo? Why are we doing this in the city of Bethlehem? This is something that we should be talking to Mayor Turk about and Mayor Panto about, and then going across the Lehigh Valley. And this is just the first step as far as bringing together that partnership. But that idea is that, and climate is a great example, and sustainable practices are a great example. And obviously there's been a lot of talk about what's going on in the Lehigh Valley as far as development is concerned. We need to get on the same page. We need to make sure that we are working together. We had a great meeting about what that commission is going to look like. That will be a separate event down the road where we'll be able to make some big announcements about that Lehigh Valley Green Ribbon Commission. But the idea is that we are on the same page and we are on the same team. And a big part of that is understanding, as we said, is that the cities are not going anywhere, and what is good for these individual cities are good for all of us. So, as I said, it's been an exciting day for us. Sal said we had an event over at Northampton Community College where we're talking to Leadership Lehigh Valley, and then we came and we had our first meeting with WSP, and now we're here to kind of formalize this agreement and kick off something that we believe will be around for decades. And one day we'll look back on this as kind of the first step that the public sector decided to come together with that unified voice that we need, because those issues that we're talking about. We had, I think, almost 100 people yesterday at our housing strategy session at Northampton Community College. We've obviously been spending a lot of time taking a look at our homelessness issue in the city of Bethlehem. And, we've said many times, we had 700 some people be part of our climate action planning process. People want to be involved, and they want to be engaged, and they want us to step up. And that's what we're doing. Once again, not for us, but instead for our cities, and doing that in a permanent way. So with that being said, I would certainly open it up for any questions from any members of the media that you might have for any of the three of us.
I want to add something, if you don't mind. Thanks,
Absolutely.
Mayor Reynolds. So, like all good things, you pilot this in advance. And one thing that we did in Allentown earlier this year, or in season 1, in the pilot of the 3-City Coalition, if you like, was we faced a dirt bike problem. Lindsay's familiar with that. We worked closely with our neighboring communities and worked to influence or to speak with our legislators about the need to establish legislation that would allow third-class cities like Bethlehem and like Easton to seize and destroy dirt bikes, which has led to, in Allentown, a decrease in that particular nuisance crime. Yeah. My hope is that we've seen the same results in Easton and in Bethlehem. We know that this model works, and this now can allow us to tackle the bigger issues that we face together.
Mayor Reynolds, or any of the mayors, you guys are talking about how we believe this has the possibility to become a permanent institution. It sounds like a fairly voluntary matter. Not to suggest it's not worthwhile or not, but what is there to make this long lasting other than the goodwill that you guys bring to this day?
Well, first, that's a lot of goodwill. But the second thing I would say is that it's coming up with it, making it serious and creating those initiatives and including people within our communities. I think one thing that we've seen throughout time is that when something is done and it's done well, there is a demand from citizens to continue it, and there is a demand to make sure that we build on that. We always say that, you don't want to agree with someone just for the sake of agreeing with them. You want to agree with them because they have a good idea. And what we want to do is make sure that we're showing progress on things like the Green Ribbon Commission. We're showing progress on reducing homelessness. We're showing progress on tackling our affordable housing crisis. And then all of the different people that are our partners, our members of city council, the members who are in our community, it's just going to be one of those things that we come to expect. And I can say is I can't imagine any mayor coming forward that comes after us would somehow believe that the progress that we are going to make in the coming years is something we want to stop.
That's a great question. Being a mayor, and I've been a mayor now this is 16 years.
For the second time.
For the second time. And being mayor is no longer a political position. Yes, you may get elected politically, but it's really managing and running your city to the best that you can, being as effective as you can be. And anyone who comes into our roles after we're gone that doesn't recognize this as an important part of the Lehigh Valley overall is really making a huge mistake. And I think this will succeed primarily because we're going to make sure it's successful.
The one thing that I would add to that, Tom, that is interesting, so Mayor Reynolds and I are coming into our second year as mayors, and we inherited a lot of things from previous administrations. And you ask, why are we doing this? And it's because that's what we do. That's what we do in our city government. And sometimes it makes sense and sometimes it doesn't. But when we can hand off to the next administration and that administration says, oh, well, we have this 3-city coalition. It's something that we do, and it's built into the structure of city government that has a better chance of continuing on and succeeding with future generations. So we have time to start this work and to build it into an institution that successive generations can anticipate being part of their future, and a tool that they can rely on to accomplish meaningful change within their communities.
And I would add, we've all been through campaigns before, and I think, those of us in communities that we talk about in Bethlehem a lot, it's not just about the opportunities, it's about the outcomes. Like, how do you get to the right side of the equation? And how do you make that progress? And I would hope that in the future, it is going to be one of those topics that when candidates are running for office, like, what are your ideas? What are the things that you think is going to move the needle, that is going to not just create opportunities within your community, but is really going to move the needle on outcomes throughout the Lehigh Valley?
Don't mistake us, especially my words. we love being 62 communities, and every community has its own identity, its own mores and traits. But we got to start looking at the region as one community, not one city. We don't want Matt to be mayor of the Lehigh Valley or Willie to be mayor of the Lehigh Valley, but we do want the Lehigh Valley to address the regional issues that we cannot do effectively and efficiently on our own.
Lindsay?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could say a little bit more about what this will look like kind of in practice going forward. I mean, does this involve like meetings on a regular basis, and when it comes to like advocating in front of the state delegation, like what does that really look like?
Yeah, so we have been meeting regularly. We are going to meet monthly and as much as we need to. One of the things that's going to happen is, the three of us meet on a regular basis. But the way we see this in practice is it might be a meeting between, our different staff members that are working on the same issue. Or it could be within our Community Economic Development Department or our planning director or our public works director or whatever it might be, especially as it relates to some of the Lehigh Valley, Lehigh Valley Planning Commission and things like that. So we have been having different meetings ourselves as far as hosting throughout 2022. So we will be meeting on a regular basis, both virtually and in person. But also we are going to be having our staff members meet on individual issues. And one of the things that we talk about there with both advocating and educating is that we are going to go into other people's spaces. That one of the things that I think is important is that we aren't afraid to go and have those conversations within neighborhoods and within institutions that are not within our community. So I think that as we start to brainstorm on what some of those forums and events and initiatives can look like, you can guarantee seeing more and more of us within the other communities.
So this existed on an informal basis prior to anything like this. That's called a text thread. Everybody loves a group text, but it's about more than where the best hot dog in the Lehigh Valley is. I think it's Yakko's. I don't think it's Roy's. But we have to formalize those things. So we're part of networks like the Pennsylvania Municipal League. We're each members of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and we have opportunities to learn from each other in those environments and from mayors across Pennsylvania and across the country. But when we start to do things more regularly and bring our staff together, that's where what one brilliant public works manager at the city of Bethlehem can share with somebody at the city of Easton, or how can we collaborate across cities on economic development and community development work and learn what is meaningful on the south side of Bethlehem is also meaningful on the east side of Allentown. That's where this really has an opportunity to take off and accelerate. So there's regular formal meetings, not just between mayors, but between our staffs, and then starting to identify those complex challenges that we face together and that we feel like we can make a difference on. And I'm glad that you mentioned the advocacy that we can do in places like Harrisburg and in Washington. This speaks to the value of collective power of our voices. It's one thing if Mayor Reynolds or Mayor Panto shows up to talk to Governor Shapiro in Harrisburg. It's an entirely different thing when we all show up as a trio and ask him to make some changes on behalf of our cities and our community.
And I would just add to that, obviously, it could be Governor Shapiro, but it also can be the CEOs or the presidents in the Lehigh Valley. There is an increased value to us doing that when we sit down with them in the same room and say, this is something that is important to us in our city, or this is something that we're glad to partner with, or this is something that we are not going to support. So all of those different options just become that much more powerful when we're together. And the one other thing I would just say is this is also about accountability for us. I think those of us that know us here in the city of Bethlehem, and I think Mayor Panto and Mayor Turk are the same ways. It's one thing to do something quietly and meet quietly. It's another thing to be able to make these promises publicly. And I have often said that one of the things that you need to do as elected officials is you need to make promises publicly so people can hold you accountable. So you can come back 6 months or a year from now or 2 years from now and be like, remember back on February 9th, Mayor Reynolds, when you said you guys were going to make progress, like where's the progress on that? And then it's on all of us to explain what that progress looks like. And I know that people in the city of Bethlehem and the people in City Hall, and I know there's a lot of City Hall employees here, that's the way they look at their jobs too. Is they're not afraid to make promises, because when you make promises and you keep your promises, that's what builds up public trust. That's what builds up accountability. And that's what makes people want to look at their cities and their elected officials and say when they say something, they don't just mean it, but they've already figured out how they're going to make progress.
guys identify these three particular goals, sustainability, housing, homelessness?
I think that it would be, as we've been saying, and I don't want to speak for Matt or Sal, but as I said last night, the housing crisis is everywhere. We don't have enough places for people to live, and rents and prices are soaring. And I don't think anybody could be a local elected official in 2023, and housing and homelessness are not two of their top priorities. And I think that, once again, there's a lot of common ground. It came up a lot in our conversations. We wanted to focus on things that we share, but also that regional solutions are part of what we need here. We've talked about that a lot. We had that conversation last night with our community about our housing solutions. That the reality is that not all of our solutions are within our own power, that they don't fall within the city of Bethlehem, that the only way that we're going to be able to make progress is that equation looks like, how do you get all of us on the same page?
Since you touched on the housing thing, then why limited to the three cities? Obviously, like, you guys have large populations, some larger than others, but like for part of the housing is there aren't enough homes, not just apartments. Those are typically built in boroughs, townships. Why the three of you guys, as opposed to any of the other 60 mayors or however many mayors it is?
Yeah, I think that we face these problems acutely within our cities, but if you're asking the question, like, are we going to advocate for things that happen outside of our cities? The answer is yes. That's part of why we're here together. We need more housing, and there is not a lot of room to build it in Allentown, Bethlehem, or Easton. We had this conversation last night that there's not a lot of open land in the city of Bethlehem. So if we are going, but there is one housing market in the Lehigh Valley. So we start here as far as what are the common kind of issues that the three cities are facing. But those solutions are absolutely going to involve us building those regional partnerships and lobbying other municipalities and other elected officials, but how important it is to the Lehigh Valley that they adopt land development solutions and they adopt plans, and their opinions on infrastructure and everything else are connected to a regional kind of vision or identity, and not just an individual municipality identity.
I would add a little to that, and this is from, we didn't discuss this beforehand, but this is from my perspective, is that the way that we face each of these challenges as cities is a little bit different than the way that the suburban communities face these challenges. The housing crisis that we collectively face in the Lehigh Valley is the consequences of not taking action on that crisis are felt in a different way in our downtowns than they are in other parts of the Lehigh Valley. So there is something unique about the way that we talk to each other about addressing these challenges, and there is something unique as third-class cities in the powers that we have within Pennsylvania state government to address some of these challenges. So it is certainly not exclusive in that respect, but we have to make sure that we're watching out for each other as cities. And there's a host of other issues that we can address as well that are uniquely and acutely felt in Allentown and in Bethlehem and Easton. It doesn't diminish by any means the need to think about these things on a broader regional basis, but there is something special about the cities.
And I would just add that nowhere is it written that poor people can't live in townships. Cities are core communities that have high percentages of poor people and people who live in below the poverty level. But that doesn't mean that one of the townships can't dedicate 100 acres, just 100 acres to an affordable housing development where they have the land. We don't have the land. I would build 100. When I was out of office for 16 years, I worked for two housing developers, and we built a housing development in Forks Township that was for first-time home buyers. Didn't have to be poor. It still had to be bankable and afford that house. But that house was $119,000 for a single and $99,000 for a townhouse. Now, that's a while ago. I admit it. Today it might be $149,000 and $199,000. But the fact of the matter is, those houses aren't being built in townships. The houses that are being built in townships are hundreds of thousands of dollars more. So we need to look at it collectively, and maybe what we could do collectively is go there and instead of making it warehouse development or industry, make it residential, which their community would like better, and zone it for residential development rather than that, and make the density that we have in the city so that they could get more units on that property and make more money by renting it to people of lower means. I don't know that we can solve the affordability housing problem. We are short 11 million homes in the United States. 11 million. It's economics 101, law of supply and demand. The lower the demand, or the lower the supply, the higher the demand, your prices are going to go up. It's ridiculous what people are getting in the Lehigh Valley for pricing of housing and rental units, but they're getting it. And there's waiting lists. I don't like when we build a project in Easton and it's $2,400 a month or $2,500 a month rent. I don't like it, but the state isn't looking at rent control, and I don't particularly like rent control. I'm not a person who really wants rent control. However, we're seeing what's happening when you don't have it. The older apartments, I just had a guy stop me at when I was getting coffee this morning. He pays $600 a month rent. His lease is up in June or the end of May. June 1st, his rent, it was notified, it was going up to $1,200. That's not sustainable. So he's talking about sustainability from housing as well. And I just think that we need to collectively solve the affordable housing problem in Lehigh Valley. We're not going to do it alone in the city of Easton or Bethlehem or Allentown because we just don't have the room. If we had the room, I can guarantee you these three people up here would solve the problem. But we don't have the room.
And I would just add on the housing, we talk about it a lot as that issue of displacement and the ethical and moral reasons, which are the biggest reasons. But obviously, the reason why we're so focused on it as well is just the economic effect that it has on our businesses. People talk a lot about the vacancies. There's nowhere for these people to live. There's nowhere for people to come to work in a lot of our major institutions. And one of the things that we talked about with housing is how do we turn this into not just an issue of, on the moral side, that we want to make sure we have a city for everyone, but how are we able to carry that message through the different groups that we're a part of, different boards that we're on, that this is a private sector issue too. That if we don't build more housing, the Lehigh Valley is going to not be as economically vibrant as it could be.
And that's also for job attraction. You're looking to get people to move into the valley to work, and if they can't find a house, they don't move here. That's something we could talk to the private sector about.
Any other questions? We will certainly be around afterwards as well.
Gracias.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Nice job, guys.
Thank you.
Well, good.
Thank you. Thank you.